Good afternoon, friends. Jack Olesker here again. And today we're going to have a little fun, okay? Do something a little different. You know, I wouldn't give a rat's ass for somebody that couldn't make fun of themselves, have a little bit of laugh at their own expense. One of the things that I loved about my wife early on was I realized that she could give it out, but she could take it. So, we have a great relationship where we'll tease each other good-naturedly sometimes. But it's good to be able to do that with yourself, too. If you can't laugh at yourself, if you take life so seriously, then it's a rough deal. It's rough enough to deal with life if you can't have some laughs. And the fun laughs are the laughs that you have at yourself. So Kim years ago owned a couple of yarn shops where knitters would come in and they'd spend all day on these beautiful couches, and there were antiques and tons of yarn. And Kim's a master knitter. And one of the things that the women that would come in would love is if Kim would make a mistake. They'd say, "Oh, Kim made a mistake," and they'd start teasing her. So let's talk about a few of the mistakes that Jack Olesker, this guy with 1,300 episodes of television, 17 motion pictures, and 6 novels to his credit, have made. Careful viewers will have noted in the last episode when I held up Beyond Forever, No Place Like Home, and The Siege of Superport, that despite my name being Jack Olesker, on these novels, it's J. Bradford Olesker. Ooh, J. Bradford Olesker. J. Bradford Olesker. These were in my young and pretentious years. And I fancied myself F. Scott Fitzgerald. So because of that, I dropped my first name and wrote it as J. Bradford Olesker. And if you don't believe these were my younger years, well, have I got proof for you? I hear Kim over there laughing.
Lord.
If you think that was something, take a look at this.
You got a little glare there.
Okay.
We want to get the whole, there you
Okay.
go.
Welcome back. It's Welcome Back, Cotter. This was in my perm
I
years.
do believe that was a perm.
So fortunately, as I got older and I lost some of my pretentiousness by getting kicked around a little bit, I finally wised up and started calling myself Jack Olesker on my novels. So that's a little funny bit. When Kim and I first met, I was living in the Bahamas. We're going to get a little personal here because the last 4 or 5 episodes have been chock full of so many facts. And I think it's good for you guys to get to know me a little bit. But when I was living in the wonderful islands of the Bahamas, I lived in Paradise Island near Atlantis Resort for a number of years, working with the broadcast network of the Bahamas down there. And Kim was on vacation with 5 of her girlfriends, and we met and we had so much fun, and we were talking about different things with all of her girlfriends, and new guys who were coming up and chatting with them. And she said, "What do you do here in the Bahamas?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a writer." She said, "Well, we all write." And I said, "No, we all spell. We don't all write." And she said, "Well, have you ever written anything I've heard of?" And I said, "Well, have you ever heard of the Care Bears?" And she said, "The Care Bears?" And I thought, I got her. Okay. Kim always says I embellish the story a little bit.
Tiny bit.
Honey, what can I tell you? I'm a writer, But, look, when No Place Like Home was published, I was 25 years old. And working in the men's clothing business, okay, I was doing well because I was in my family business. But this is my first novel. And 2 months after it got accepted, while it was still in galleys being prepped for publication, MGM buys the film rights for $50,000. And let me tell you, back in 1976, $50,000 was a lot of money. So before I know it, I'm driving a Mercedes, living a good life and everything else, and got very big for my britches. And then I moved out to LA, and I was convinced that I was going to be the next huge writer in Los Angeles, where I knew nobody, okay? And what I discovered was there were 5,832 people coming out to LA that had the same idea that I did. So it was a lot of hard work. When I first moved to LA, I was so desperate to get close to the entertainment business. One of my first calls was to Central Casting. And I got work as an extra on films. Extras, as you probably know, are the people in the background. And in those days, you would call on the phone 100 times till you'd finally get through the Central Casting, and they say, well, we need somebody for a party scene. Do you have a tuxedo? And if you did, that would help. And you would drive out to this location and work for like 8 or 10 hours a day. $35 was what I used to get. And a boxed lunch. Oh, I don't want to forget the boxed lunch. So it was an interesting dichotomy for me. And, in future episodes, I'm going to get a little philosophical. I don't ever want to offend anybody. If you're a believer, you're a believer. If you're not, you're not. I happen to be a believer. And I think there's a reason why things happen. I think there's a path. And my path in the very beginning was, oh, here I am. I've got a bestseller. I've sold it to MGM. And I needed to be taken down a couple of notches. And boy, I'll tell you what, sitting on the ground with 100 people that are going to be extras at a carnival scene, and you're waiting for 4 hours until they call you to work for 2 minutes in front of the cameras, that's pretty humbling stuff. So I had to go through a lot to get to where I got. I'll talk about that in future episodes. But I want to go back to books just a little bit. This is kind of like part 2 of novels. And let's assume, and I know what assume means, you don't have to tell me, but let's assume that you've done everything right. You've developed your characters, you've got your concept. If you decide to do a historical novel, well, that's great. But whatever you've done, you've looked at that computer screen for a year, and you just go through the travails that are involved with getting your book written. And you've written it and rewritten it and rewritten it. There was an author, most of you are probably too young to remember, named James Michener, who wrote novels called Hawaii, South Pacific, that was adapted into a pretty successful film. And Michener's novels were all like 1,000 pages, 1,200 pages long. And he was known for only writing 7 pages a day, sometimes less. And he would write those pages and rewrite them and rewrite them and rewrite them and rewrite them in those days until he was 100% happy with it. Now, that's one way of writing. It's not my way of writing. I write from the start all the way to the end. Then I go back and I start to rewrite it and I polish it. But whatever works for you, let's say that you've done what you needed to do, and now you've got a novel. Okay, here it is on my desk. It's 485 pages. What am I going to do with it? Okay, because getting that novel published, that's going to open all of the other doors. Okay, I've published 6 novels, but let me tell you something. Out of all of the novels that I've published and all of the readers that I've had, more people saw one episode of these guys in an animated script that I wrote, which was my first job in television. More people saw the Care Bears than in all of my novels combined, okay? So television and motion pictures is what's going to put food on your table. And boy, it's important to have that food on the table. And that's why you want to start out with novels, because it'll open doors for you. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about how I got started in television and how one of my novels opened the door for me. So what are you going to do with this huge beast you've got? It's different, sadly, than it was when I started out in this industry so many years ago. Very, very few publishers will look at what is called an unsolicited manuscript. Children's book publishers are the exception to the rule, but most publishers will not look at an unsolicited manuscript. I'm fortunate because I've got a long history in television motion pictures. I can cold call and throw my credentials around, and generally they'll say, let me see the manuscript. But for you, forget about getting on the phone with G.P. Putnam Sons or Signet or New American Library. They're not even going to take your call. They're going to tell you we don't accept unsolicited manuscripts. What you got to do is one of the hardest tasks that you're ever going to do. You've got to get an agent. And I'm not a big fan of agents, but you've got to get an agent, okay? That means you need to do your homework. You've got to get on the web. You've got to find out what agents will take unsolicited manuscripts, will take query letters. You need to write a one-page coverage of your novel. Call them cold on the phone. I don't care if they say, don't call us. Call them. Get them on the phone. Have your 45-second elevator pitch ready. Pitch your novel to them and say, I would appreciate it if I can send my manuscript to you for your consideration. You keep swinging. You're going to get turned down so many times by agents, but keep swinging. And eventually, you're going to get somebody that's going to say, send me your manuscript. When that happens, the skies part, the sunbeams come down, there's rainbows, because you have made your first step. Write your novel, make it the best it can possibly be, polish it until it shines like the Kohinoor diamond, and then get yourself an agent. And when you do, celebrate that first step, and I'll celebrate it right along with you. Have a blessed day. I'll see you soon.